Hi, everyone. This is Caroline from Fiat Integrative Health in Franklin, Tennessee, and you're listening to the Fiat Health Podcast. We believe that now more than ever, the healthcare industry has become a place of confusion. And over the years, we have been asked countless questions about what true health and integration for the whole person looks like. Join us every other week as we explore topics ranging from primary care and women's health to counseling and spiritual health. We're so glad you're here. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fiat Health Podcast. This is Caroline. I am a family nurse practitioner here at Fiat Integrative Health in Franklin. And today I am joined by Lucy, one of our counselors.
Hello, hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good. Just getting your day started?
Yeah, I was like, need some deep breaths before I do this. Just be present. But good.
Oh, you already saw somebody this morning, right?
I did, yeah. And earlier than I normally see someone. So I'm like, this is my normal starting hour.
Well, good. So today we are going to jump into EMDR, which is something that Lucy recently got trained in and has been utilizing in practice. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it's kind of a buzzword if you're in the mental health space at all.
Definitely.
You've surely heard of it, but maybe some people haven't. So anyways, I would love for you to just tell us, like, what the heck is it? And then we'll kind of jump into how you utilize it and what you've seen with clients and everything like that.
And I think we were talking about doing this topic because even if you have heard of it, I think there's still often a lot of questions of like, okay, what would that actually look like in a therapy session? So excited to talk about all those different things today. But okay, EMDR. And I told Caroline, I want to give the disclaimer. I am freshly trained on this, not an expert by any means. But I did go through a training and have been using it since like April now. Oh. So it's like, 4 or 5 months? Mm-hmm. And really like it. I also did it as a client prior to training and saw great benefit in my own life. So it's a little bit of my background of what I am bringing to the table knowledge-wise. Mm-hmm. But EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. And so it was originally developed for like veterans to help them with PTSD and flashbacks and some of their trauma from war. And then has since then been adapted for any number of different topics or things that you want to target. And it's no longer just eye movement either. In fact, I very rarely, if ever, do eye movement as the form of processing in sessions with my clients. Mm-hmm. But to give a little bit of background, so the kind of theory for it came from, when we're in REM sleep, our eyes are like darting back and forth constantly. And that's really the stage of our sleep where we're like processing our day and processing what we've been through. And the idea was, how can we kind of recreate that while we're awake to kind of gently, how can we do that while we're awake to create opportunity for processing of things that have been unprocessed, that we have not naturally processed? And that's kind of the definition of trauma, is like things that our brain thinks are still present that have actually happened in the past. So like we're still having present live reactions to these things that are no longer occurring. We are now safe, but our bodies don't know that. So by processing it, we can hopefully put it back into the past and make it desensitized, aka a little less intense of like that emotional or physical reaction, and then reprocessed. So EMDR.
Really interesting. Yeah. And I think just like speaking from like a sciencey kind of standpoint of just like, if we can distract the brain, essentially.
Yes.
Is kind of what it sounds like to me, the goal is.
Definitely.
So if we can distract the brain, then we can access maybe things that otherwise are sitting in this protected space.
Yes.
Of like, oh, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to touch that. Or like, even if it's subconscious, obviously. And so, we even see it with like, we've been doing lab draws with kids and, we've been doing, or, like we get a little massage gun and massage their feet. And it's just like their brain can't compute like the pain of getting a little stick with something else going on in some other part of my body. Yeah. And so it's like very confused, but very effective often. Similarly to like a woman in labor who like holds a comb or something like that, trying to distract the brain from where that pain is coming from. from like, and that's obviously like on a physical level. So I can only imagine on an emotional level or mental, if I can distract my brain with whatever it is, eye movements, or I know some research has showed like even just like walking and talking when you're like doing two different things can have somewhat of a similar effect. So yeah, it's just super fascinating.
There are a lot of different theories of like why it works. And one of them is what you just said of like taxing the working memory. So like overstimulating your brain of what it's doing. Or at the same time, like you're doing these things to whether eye movements or some people like tap their shoulders on opposite sides, or I have these like fun buzzers that buzz in your hands alternating. Any of those are keeping you in the present at the same time your mind is going to the past. And so how can we like do both those things at the same time? Dual attention is what they call it.
Dual attention. Cool. So who would you say is kind of like an ideal client for EMDR where you're like sitting in a session, you're like, I think EMDR would be really helpful in this scenario?
Yeah. Kind of like I said, the initial creation of it was for trauma. So if anyone is coming to me, whether with like a single trauma, like I went through this car accident and I can't stop thinking about it and now it's impacting my ability to be in a car.
Sure.
I'm thinking EMDR.
Yeah.
Or complex trauma like childhood abuse. I'm like, okay, EMDR. It'll be probably a more complicated, intense process for more complicated trauma.
Sure.
But I recently have been doing a lot of other adaptations too that I've been really excited about. I've been doing the EMDR adaptation for depression. So instead of targeting memories, we're targeting what triggered a depressive episode.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's been really helpful for some of my clients who have had, we've been doing talk therapy for depression for a long time and haven't seen a ton of movement. And I was like, let's try this before we move anything bigger.
And what does that look like?
I mean, depends on what triggered the depressive episode, like I feel like a common one is like breakups. So like, okay, let's think about that moment that like kind of created all that spiral of thoughts of like, gosh, I'm worthless and I'll never have anyone and blah, blah, blah. Great. Let's talk about like that moment that you started having all those thoughts with the breakup. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And before, would people typically be like resistant to talking about that? Or maybe it's just on a surface level and EMDR allows it to be more like, in what way is it more effective?
I think depression in particular and those kind of like spiraling negative self-thoughts in particular get in a spiral and you don't get out of it. And so you're talking about the same thing over and over. In EMDR, really you're like talking about the same thing, but just doing it in a different way. And so all of a sudden you're like maybe thinking about new things or having new things to talk about with the same thing.
You're seeing it in a different light.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So could you walk me through a very practical, what does it look like if I'm a client and you're like, let's do EMDR? And I'm like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. When people think about EMDR, they usually think about that like moment of reprocessing with the bilateral stimulation, which means what I already said earlier, like eye movement, buzzing, tapping. But EMDR really has this whole, I'm not going to remember how many stages it is. I think it's 8. 8 stages to it, and that's only one of them. And so really, if someone's coming to me saying they want to do EMDR, we're going to be spending several sessions before we even get to that processing. First of all, doing like resourcing, making sure they have tools to calm down if they get not calm during the processing. I loved in my training, someone described it as like how rude of me it would be to give you a gas pedal before I gave you a brake. And I think about that all the time of like, we need to make sure you have brakes and multiple of them before we put on the gas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, we're talking about like planning. So what exactly are the different memories that we're thinking about? What exactly are the negative beliefs we want to target? Yeah. What are the triggers of depressive episodes? Or another person I like EMDR for is like phobias. What are the moments that like kind of brought up that phobia, or what are moments that you've really had that phobia triggered? Kind of making they call it like a target sequence plan, a plan for where we're going to go. And from there, we go into the processing, which I can speak more to in a second, because I feel like that's the part most people have the most questions about.
Yeah.
But doing that processing of the memory, revisiting it in a really structured, safe way. And before we process any target, we're going to take a baseline of like, okay, what is your level of distress when you think about this? What is the level that you believe that negative belief to be true? And then that way we can like also measure afterwards, how has that changed? How does that feel better? Or how is it not feeling better? And what do we need to adjust in order to help it?
Sure.
And then we're going to make, before we move on from that, we're going to make sure all the distress is cleared. You no longer feel any or minimal distress when thinking about this event. Then we're going to make sure the positive belief that you want to replace the negative belief with feels either 90% or completely true. And we're going to make sure you have no like bodily sensations left, no like tightness or that like quintessential like panic associated with trauma, that's not left. So when all three of those things are done, we would say that target is like cleared. And we might move on to another target in the sequence plan, or we would do some type of like reevaluation to see where we need to go next.
Okay.
And repeat.
Awesome.
Right?
Sounds cool.
Yeah. It's so structured.
Yeah.
Which
I like structure.
Yes. And I know you told me you were like, I'm going to be asking why. Like, tell me more about this. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of like the basis of why I think this thing is helpful, is because you're getting to talk about things that are really scary and really hard to talk about, but in a really structured, dip your toe in one at a time way.
Like a systematic way.
Yeah. And I think anytime that we are given a safe place, because hopefully you and I have established rapport and safety in our relationship, in a structured, like, I know what's going to happen way, you're going to see some type of movement.
Yeah, it feels a lot better than like, let's just jump into this trauma with reckless abandon.
Yeah.
Not that that's what you typically do, but the thought of like, just tell me about your experience here or whatever. But to be like, okay, very systematic.
Yes.
All of these things are in place first. Feels so good. So tell me, explain a little bit more on like processing and like that stage where it's like, okay, we're doing the eye movement or the tapping or whatever. Like, what is it that you're walking clients through? What does it look like practically?
I feel like this is always easiest to just like give an example of what a mini processing would look like for myself. So when I was doing my training, we were having to be like mini clients for one another. And my target was like, okay, when I feel like insecure as a counselor, I don't remember what my negative belief was, probably like I'm not good enough or something like that. And so they help you like kind of pinpoint what the worst part of that is. And that's where you end up starting for the processing. So I was like, you know when this feels the worst? When I'm in the Middle Tennessee Mental Health Professionals Facebook group. That's when this feels the worst.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
It's really like, okay, start there. And so you start doing like the bilateral stimulation and you're just noticing like that worst part. They'll do a couple other questions to help you like bring that to your attention to be activated.
So the bilateral stimulation though could be like, does it always have to be bilateral? Okay, so, and by that, it means both sides.
Yeah, both sides of your body. So either moving your eyes back and forth, tapping your different shoulders, buzzers in different hands, or another common one is like wearing headphones and you have alternating beeps in each ear.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you start with that.
Yeah, with whatever the worst part is.
Yeah. And so you're like, okay, think about this worst thing. And then buzz, buzz, buzz. You're like feeling buzzing in each hand while you're like simultaneously trying to think about this terrible worst thing. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And I'm normally telling clients like, just notice where your brain goes. Don't try and direct it anywhere. Just like see where it takes you and see what you notice.
Okay.
And then after like 30 seconds or so, in this case, my counselor is pausing me and is saying like, okay, literally, she says every single time she pauses me, what do you notice? Take a deep breath. What do you notice? I'm like, man, I notice that I'm imagining all the things people would say about me in this Facebook group. And then she says, okay, go with that. That's all she says. You don't talk in between each one because the kind of idea is like, we don't want to interrupt your processing. So she says, go with that. We do another round of the stimulation. And I'm like, okay, now I'm noticing it feels bad to be imagining.
My heart is racing and I feel terrible.
Yeah, I feel like embarrassed and ashamed, whatever. She says, okay, go with that. Do another round. And you keep doing this a while until I think eventually in this example, I got to a point where I was like, I don't know these people that I'm imagining hypothetically in my head saying these things about me. She's like, okay, go with that. I'm like, I don't care what people that I don't know say about me? Okay, go with that. And you can see how like, this is kind of a simplistic example, but how it kind of ends up in that adaptive, positive light. And this whole idea behind EMDR is that our bodies and our brains are naturally adaptive, but the adaptation gets blocked by trauma. And so when we're doing this, like we're able to connect it a little bit clearer.
Got it.
And then I end up at like, okay, I don't care about what random people in a Facebook group say about me, which by the way, they're not saying anything about me. And I feel good enough and I feel positive about the things that I bring to the table as a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I tell people in between each round of stimulation, I'm like, okay, give me the headline of what you noticed rather than the whole article. Again, because we don't want to interrupt. But then eventually, if we hit a block, we'll pause and talk about it. If things are feeling clear, we'll pause and be like, okay, so we'll do kind of that baseline assessment again. How distressing is this feeling? How true is that feeling? If it's feeling clear, then we'll go to the next thing.
Is there like follow-up? So let's just say you like go through that process using the same example. You're like, yeah, I don't care what strangers think about me. So then is there kind of like an exit process of like, okay, like now when you encounter that similar feeling, you know, when you go on the Facebook group, the hope is then that, you know, I know obviously the hope is that naturally you jump to, I don't care what these people think about me, but there surely is probably some time of like kind of retraining and bringing that back to the truth.
Yeah. You can do future templates with EMDR, which would be basically exactly what you're saying. Okay, process what it would be like the next time you get on Facebook and feel this. Kind of like play the video through. And then anytime you notice distress, pause and we'll do a round of bilateral stimulation.
Interesting. Do you ever tell people to do bilateral stimulation outside of like the clinical setting where you're like, okay, if you start feeling that and you're sitting at home, just like distract yourself basically with that? Or
yeah, complicated answer. I think most people when they ask that are like, can I do EMDR by myself?
Yeah.
And the answer is basically like, no. Even I as a therapist am like, can't I just do this myself? Why do I have to pay someone like I know how to do it?
Yeah.
But we all have a dual relationship with ourselves and can't see ourselves as clearly as others can. But for some people, the bilateral stimulation, if you do it like really slowly, can be calming. And so they'll recommend you do it while you're doing any of like your resources or calming tools when you're at home.
Yeah, like just tapping in general is like a hot topic for like calming as a mechanism. So yeah, interesting. That's awesome. So how does it fit into, obviously we're like a faith-based clinic. And I think there's in general a very healthy skepticism towards anything that comes from mainstream everything of like, is this woo-woo or voodoo or legit? So tell me how it fits into, especially people who are like, that sounds wrong or whatever, you know, bringing criticism to the table. How do you see it fitting into our faith?
I think it definitely fits. I think to answer kind of like the woo-woo sketchy part first, I don't know how to answer other than like, I don't think it is. And I feel very sensitive to woo-woo and sketchy things. I mean, when I said this earlier, like, I'll be so honest, I don't completely understand why the bilateral stimulation works. I don't know if that's actually what makes it work.
Sure.
But I think being in a safe, structured environment, processing things that is hard works.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the basis I fall back on with EMDR. And again, I've done it as a client and have found it like wildly helpful. Would be happy to speak to that more if we think it would be helpful.
Do you ever incorporate like prayer or faith, like kind of woven in with EMDR?
Definitely. A lot of the resources and tools we use are spiritual related for if people are looking for that. So a couple like common tools are like calm place, like imagining and visualizing a calm place. A lot of people do that in some type of spiritual setting, whether that be a chapel or like their prayer space that they already have made in their mind that they go to in prayer, like sitting on a park bench with Jesus. There's another common tool of like, okay, can we name like a protective figure, a nurturing figure, and a wise figure that you can call on when you need those things? And for a lot of people, those are faith-based: Jesus, Mary, God the Father, Holy Spirit, a saint. So that can be really cool. A lot of times we're just ending in prayer in a moment of like bringing this to the Lord, surrendering it to the Lord. That's probably honestly the most common one of tool is like, in EMDR, it's called container method. Like, how can we put this really hard stuff that we talked in a container so it feels contained for the week until we're back together to open it again? Sure. And a lot of people will like put in their container and then they'll hand the container to Jesus and be like, Jesus, you're going to hold this for the week, please.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Or even in processing, a lot of times it'll be like, wow, like that's not what God would say to me. Or so many different iterations of that, of how people very naturally, not me prompting them, are bringing in the Lord into their own processing.
That's beautiful.
Very cool.
Yeah, super cool. And I think too, just on a very natural level, well, I guess it would be spiritual, but I feel like the devil tries so hard to keep things protected, right? So like, especially lies, because he is the father of lies. And so to have it in a nice box that's fortified, and that's what EMDR is really trying to do, is like, let's open this up and let's find the truth here. And we've, tried this way and you've tried this way. You've tried praying about it. You've tried talking to your spiritual director, and we're still really struggling with this box that is so protective and houses this beautiful lie. And I feel like even if you never bring in Jesus, just like you're saying, in a very real way, like that seems like the goal. Is that
right? You're moving towards truth, beauty, and goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and for me, like, it definitely doesn't raise flags for woo. I think anything like EMDR, medicine is completely neutral. There are a few things that are like outright demonic, like voodoo, literally. But in general, something like this, where we're using neuroscience essentially to be able to talk about hard things, can always be used in an improper way.
Yeah, definitely.
Could totally be used in the wrong way. And then could obviously be used in tandem and, bringing the Lord in a beautiful way. And I think that's kind of the beauty of having a counselor who you trust and who aligns with your values, because I feel like it can get into scary places with people who maybe don't even realize they're dipping into a cult, or even just not truth, beauty, and goodness.
Definitely.
Unintentionally. But I do think that that's just so beautiful to have that safe space for people. So that's my soapbox.
I agree with your soapbox.
Awesome. Well, do you have any last thoughts about EMDR? Like, is there anybody it's not good for that you'd be like, I absolutely would not use EMDR here, or I haven't seen much success in it, maybe in this particular case?
I'm not doing EMDR with someone who like isn't ready in terms of like the resourcing and tools. Or another like metaphor I heard that I really loved is, for a lot of people, diving into the trauma can be like an on-off switch. And we need it to be on a dimmer switch in order to do EMDR and to keep it feeling safe. But that's like something we can be working on and preparing you for in counseling. And then the other like big one I think about is active suicidal ideation. I'm not going to be going there because I don't want to be bringing up more stuff until you are stabilized and feeling safe.
Totally. And I think it's too, like, someone's not going to come in and be like, give me EMDR, like, I'm going to start tapping day one.
Right.
Knowing like, okay, there's a whole process that goes into this. We're not just jumping into that bilateral stimulation.
I think sometimes people think that's what it is. And they're like, well, because they're so eger to like feel better. They're like, can we please just get to the process? Like, I'm like, yes, but only when I know it's going to feel safe for you.
I've heard it's been really helpful to my friend and I just want to, I want to jump. I would totally be that person.
Yes.
I'd be like, skip all of that fluffy stuff.
Yes.
And just let's get to the point.
I mean, when I did it as a client, I was like, I'm a counselor. Of course, I'm resourced. Let's go. And she was like, cool, but can we like check?
That's amazing. Sounds about right. Okay, great. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I mean, it's really enlightened me. I feel like I had a general idea of what EMDR was, but definitely not as much as you've just shared. So thank you so much.
I'm excited to record this. I feel like this is like the spiel I try and fit in 10 minutes with my clients. And we just did it in 30. So
it's great.
This will be awesome.
Yeah, you can send it to people who are interested in EMDR. Obviously, you have a wait list, but we have other resources for people who are interested in seeing counselors here at Fiat, or if you want to see somebody else, who is EMDR certified, I know there's all kinds of lists on the internet.
I have a few friends that are Catholic EMDR therapists that I refer to too. So feel free to email us for that.
One random question that just popped into my head is this something that can be done remotely?
Yes. Yeah. That would, most people then usually are just doing
tapping.
Like the tapping. Yeah. Or occasionally sometimes people buy their own buzzers.
Okay. Because you primarily use the buzzers.
I primarily use the buzzers. People just like the buzzers.
Yeah. Because they're vibrating in your hand.
Yeah.
Is what she means by buzzer.
Yes.
Yeah. Like little eggs.
Yeah. They look like maracas. They remind me of like toddler maraca class. Yeah.
It can totally be done remotely.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. Okay. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Lucy, for taking the time to do this.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yeah. Well, until next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. To learn more, you can visit our website at fiathealth.org. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. This helps make the podcast easier to find. Lastly, if you'd like to reach out, ask a question, or suggest a topic for a future show, send us an email at media@fiathealth.org. God bless.